I was inspired by a speech given by Zach just a couple weeks ago concerning the overweightness of America and how that this can be a true epidemic that we're facing in the future. But I realized that we can talk about this in sort of a distant approach, or we can talk about it with a real life example. And today, I am going to venerate this individual that Becky has brought to my attention. It's a good friend of hers, and I want to thank Becky because she opted out of a lunch with Tim, the Tim, okay, to be here. So she has been truly a friend of this person's. When you think of handicaps, who do you think about?
Blind.
Who?
Blind.
Blind, okay.
Wheelchair.
Who's maybe a blind person or a person with wheelchair?
Deaf.
Or deaf person. How about Helen Keller? Does Helen Keller come to mind? A person who has achieved many things far beyond what her handicap provided. How about Stephen Hawking?
Right.
We think of those people, but you know, I've never met Helen Keller or Stephen Hawking, and yet there are handicapped people that we work with, live with, that we may not even realize that they're undergoing the problems of a handicap. Today I'd like to talk to you about morbid obesity. Now, what is morbid obesity? Well, just in general terms, you have to be greater than 100 pounds overweight to be considered a morbid obesity person. Now, if you looked at insurance for possible operations that you might have, insurance says that you must have 3 morbidities. First of all, what do you think a morbidity is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that will cause you to die. That's what it is. It's a nice word for death. So what are those morbidities that can happen? Diabetes is one. You know, you can lose arms, hands, legs, go blind. So diabetes is one. How about heart conditions? You can have a heart attack, okay? How about disabling arthritis, where your bones just will not stand up under the weight of the person? Everybody that has a problem with morbid obesity has a catch-22 issue. What is that catch-22? It is that the cure is exercise. But to exercise can be death. So what is one to do? One typically is a very quiet individual that deals with their morbid obesity and tries not to let anyone else know. The person that Becky is going to present to us was telling me that they hated coming to meetings here in this room. Do you know why? Look around at the chairs. They all have arms. They would literally have bruises on both sides of their legs by trying to sit here in these chairs. Not only that, if there was some refreshments, they didn't want any. You know why? Because when they stood up, the chair comes with them. Not a very, it's a very embarrassing situation. Matter of fact, this person that Becky put me in contact with would tell about the difficulty they always had in going to the garden center for a meeting. What they would do is they never went with another person, because if they went with another person, they would impose upon themselves their problem. So they would go by themselves. They'd always figure out some reason that they had to go at a different time. They had another meeting somewhere. would walk down, stay in the Hilton, in the chair there until they could catch their breath, walk again outside of the Hilton to where the flower areas are, and they could sit down there and relax, catch their breath one more time, go to the garden center, and if you recall where people drive in there, there's a concrete abutment that's about this high, and they could sit on there. You'd sit there a while. Then they could walk down, because it's a downward incline, going down to the elevators. Then they could finally sit up in the garden center and catch their breath before, and wiping off the sweat before they would enter into a meeting. Likewise, if they went to the GOC. How many of you have been to the GOC? It is just a huge building. What to do in a huge building? Well, you arrive before anyone else, not because you're early bird, but just because you don't want people to see you trying to get to where you need to go. Midway down, when you're going down the hallway, is a bathroom. The person stops at the bathroom, not because they need to go to the bathroom, but because they need to find a seat that they can sit and catch their breath long enough to then make it the rest of the way. You see, people who are morbidly obese are probably people that you wouldn't ever realize, except for their size, that they're dealing with these issues. These issues are very difficult for them to deal with. So what is one to do? Well, one can do what Carney Wilson and Al Roker did. Do you know who they are? They had what's called a Roux-en-Y. They make a small stomach out of it. You know what the problem with that is? There's a death ratio of like 2 people for every 100 people. Why is that? Because typically when you go into it, you already have heart conditions, other problems, the morbidities that we talked about, that does not give you a good chance of survival from the operation. Well, what is one to do? Is one to live a life of not being able to do things with other people? Or perhaps death isn't that bad if it does happen. You know, at least then you're doing something to get out of this catch-22 issue. Well, this person did it. Took them 2 months of not eating real food after the operation. They had to go home with a ventilator because they couldn't breathe well. Approached death, but they were successful at it. And I just think that it was very brave for this person to tell us about it so that you could get an inkling of what the problems are with someone that has this problem. Becky, would you go in and get the person? I hope that you all give this person a round of applause for what they have done.
Brian, would you come here a second? I need your help. I would like to introduce to you my friend Ron Wilson.